I ate my lipstick off. Namaste, my witchlings. How's everybody doing? All right. I just realized I ate my lipstick off, so give me just a sec. Gotta fix that. Oh, dear Lord. All right. Sorry. That looks better. All right, namaste, witchlings, and welcome back to Die the Yoga Witch and the Yoga Witch's Cauldron. Before we do anything else, I want to do my digital housekeeping and say, please be mindful of the energy you bring into my space. Be respectful in my chat. And before we do anything else, I want you guys to take just a moment and arrive. We are not multitasking. We are not half listening while we're scrolling. We are actually here. Let your shoulders drop, unclench your jaw, soften your belly, take a slow inhale, and a long exhale. Good. December carries a particular kind of magic, doesn't it? The world grows quieter, the nights stretch longer, and whether we want it to or not, our attention turns inward. This month, our overarching theme is peace and harmony, and this week we're focusing on something that sounds lovely in theory and can be downright challenging in practice. Finding harmony in relationships. Because peace isn't just something we meditate on alone in a quiet room. Harmony isn't a vibe you light a candle for and hope it sticks. Peace and harmony are tested over and over and over again in relationships, in our partnerships, in our families, in our friendships, in our communities, and, well, maybe most relentlessly, in the relationship we have with ourselves. Our guide for this exploration this week is our Sanskrit word of the week, Maitri. Maitri means loving kindness, benevolent friendliness, and goodwill. Not politeness, not self-erasure, not, I'll be kind as long as you don't upset me. Maitri is a practice, a conscious cultivation of friendliness towards all beings, including yourself. And here's where the witchy comes in. Maitri isn't just philosophy. It's not just meditation. It is relational magic. It's the energetic tone you set when you enter a space. It's the spell you cast with your words, your silence, your presence. It's the difference between harmony that feels alive and peace that's held together by swallowed resentment and duct tape. Witches have always known this truth, though. How you hold relationships is how you shape reality. So today, we're going to talk about Maitri as both yoga practice and witchcraft. As something you embody on the mat, and something you live, negotiate, and sometimes fiercely protect in the world. This is not about being nice. This is about being whole. Let me say something that yoga teacher trainings do not often say out loud. If you could hold a pose for 5 minutes, but you cannot stay present in a difficult conversation, the practice isn't finished. So we are discussing relationships as the real practice of Maitri. If you can breathe through a long hold but shut down when someone disagrees with you, there is more to learn. If you can meditate in silence but feel hijacked by defensiveness, resentment, or people-pleasing the moment conflict appears, the initiation has only just begun. Your mat is a training ground. Your relationships are the initiation. Yoga was never meant to end at the edges of your mat. It was never meant to live only in quiet rooms with incense and perfect lighting. Yoga was designed to prepare us for life, for sensation, discomfort, uncertainty, intensity, and change. For heat, for pressure, for the moments when things really don't go the way we planned. And relationships? They are where all of that shows up at once. So, think about what your practice already teaches you when you're not even trying to learn anything. When you wobble in balance, you learn humility. You learn, do you learn that control is an illusion and adaptability matters far more than rigidity. When a pose feels impossible, you learn patience. You learn that force doesn't create opening, presence does. When your breath gets shallow, you learn to slow down. You learn that rushing only tightens the grip of discomfort. When you rest, and I mean truly rest, you learn that your worth is not measured by effort, endurance, or how much you can tolerate. Now, imagine bringing those skills into relationship. Imagine responding to emotional wobble the same way you respond to physical wobble, with curiosity instead of judgment. Imagine meeting relational discomfort the way you meet a challenging pose, not by muscling through it, but by listening, adjusting, and sometimes backing off. Imagine noticing when your emotional breath gets shallow in conversation, when your chest tightens, when your jaw clenches, and choosing to pause instead of react. This is yoga off the mat. And this is where Maitri becomes real. Most of us don't struggle to practice loving kindness towards strangers. Most of us. We don't usually struggle to offer patience to people who have no emotional charge for us. We struggle with the people who trigger our old wounds, expect more than we can give, reflect parts of ourselves we haven't healed, or ask us, directly or indirectly, to be smaller so they can stay comfortable. These are the relationships that activate the nervous system. These are the places where breath shortens, shoulders rise, and defenses come online before we've even realized what's happening. That's where the real work lives. In witchcraft, we understand that relationships are energetic contracts. Some are nourishing, some are reciprocal, some are draining. Some are karmic teachers that arrive to crack something open and bounce. Every relationship shapes us in some way. They feed us or they consume us. They teach us what we value, what we tolerate, and where we abandon ourselves. And yoga gives us the tools to notice what's happening when those contracts are activated. What happens in your body when a certain person texts you? Does your stomach drop? Does your chest tighten? Does your breath freeze for just a split second? what happens in your nervous system when you feel misunderstood, dismissed, or pressured to comply. Yoga trains awareness at the level where truth lives, below the story, below the justification, below the polite performance. Maitri asks us to bring loving kindness into that awareness, not to bypass it. It asks questions that are simple but not easy, such as, can I stay open without self-betrayal? Can I offer kindness without abandoning truth? Can I choose harmony without choosing silence? These questions don't have one-size-fits-all answers. They require discernment, honesty, and for us to feel what we'd rather explain away. And here's the witchy truth that matters most. Harmony that costs you your voice is not harmony. Peace that requires self-erasure is not peace. Maitri is not about making yourself easier to swallow. It's about bringing your full humanity into relationships with compassion, clarity, and with boundaries that protect the heart rather than wall it off. Those are not easy questions, but they are powerful ones. And every single time you ask them on the mat, in conversation, in the quiet aftermath of emotional activation, you are practicing yoga in its truest form. Not as performance, not as perfection, but as presence. And that's where real harmony begins. All right. Before we go any further, we need to talk about self-compassion. Maitri begins with self-compassion, and that is our inner altar. So we need to talk about self-compassion, not the Instagram version, not the treat yourself version, but the kind of compassion that shows up when it would be easier to push, judge, override, or just flat abandon yourself. Because without self-compassion, Maitri turns into martyrdom. It turns into giving until you're empty. Listening while your body is screaming, no! Calling self-erasure spiritual maturity. The amount of effort it took to not roll my eyes at that is impressive. Here's the truth that most spiritual spaces gloss over. If you do not practice loving kindness towards yourself, anything you offer others will eventually be conditional, resentful, or just performative. You may show up. You may give generously. You may even appear endlessly patient. But underneath it, there will be a quiet tally being kept. A sense of depletion, a feeling of being unseen, unreciprocated, or just taken for granted. That's not Maitri. That's self-abandonment wearing spiritual language. Self-Maitri is the altar everything else rests on. And in witchcraft, an altar is not decorative, it's functional. It's where energy is gathered, focused, and tended. If the altar is unstable, everything placed on it wibbles and wobbles. Yoga teaches us how to build this inner altar in quiet, embodied ways, long before we ever try to apply the philosophy. Every time you modify a pose instead of forcing it, that's self-kindness. You are choosing awareness over ego. Every time you rest without apology, that's self-respect. You are refusing the belief that your value comes from endurance. Every time you notice judgment, I should be better at this. I shouldn't feel this way. Why am I like this? And choose curiosity instead. That's Maitri in action. So what's happening here? What do I need right now? What is my body telling me? Those questions are acts of devotion. From a witch's perspective, this is energetic hygiene. Just like you wouldn't leave your front door wide open in a storm, self-compassion teaches you not to leave your inner world unguarded. When you practice compassion towards yourself, you stop allowing other people to dump unprocessed emotion, expectation, and obligation into you. You begin to recognize when something doesn't belong to you. You strengthen your energetic boundaries not through force, aggression, or spiritual bypassing, but through clarity. Clarity sounds like, I can feel empathy without taking responsibility. I can care without fixing. I can listen without absorbing. Self-Maitri often sounds very simple, but its impact is so profound. And it sounds like I am allowed to have limits, not just physical limits, emotional ones, energetic ones, relational ones. I can be learning and still be worthy. I don't have to be healed to deserve kindness. I don't have to have it all figured out to be respected. My rest does not need justification. I do not need to earn stillness. I do not need to explain my exhaustion. And I sure as hell do not need permission to pause. When these truths become your baseline, relationships change. Not because you've demanded anything from anyone else, but because you have stopped negotiating your worth. You stop overgiving because you can feel the difference between generosity and depletion. You stop tolerating harm in the name of peace because your nervous system recognizes safety as a requirement, not a reward. You stop confusing endurance with devotion. This is an important one. This one is so important. Many of us were taught explicitly or implicitly that love means staying no matter what, giving no matter the cost, and absorbing discomfort without complaint. I know I was. Yoga and witchcraft both teach something different, though. Love requires presence. Presence requires safety, and safety requires self-respect. Self-Maitri is not selfish. It does not make you cold, uncaring, or closed off. It makes your kindness cleaner, your boundaries clearer, your yes more meaningful. It allows you to offer love without resentment and compassion without collapse. That is so not selfish. That is sacred. And that is the inner altar where all true relationship work begins. And without it, no amount of harmony in the outer world is ever going to feel real. Let's talk presence. Presence as spell work. So, Let's talk about presence, not the performative kind, not the I'm nodding while planning my response kind, but real presence. The kind that requires you to stay inside your body while something uncomfortable is happening. In yoga, presence is not an abstract concept. It's trained breath by breath, moment by moment, sensation by sensation. You learn presence when your legs start to shake and you don't immediately bail. You learn it when your mind wanders and you notice without scolding yourself and gently return. You learn it when sensation intensifies and you stay curious instead of bracing. On the mat, you learn to notice when you've checked out. And, more importantly, you learn how to come back. That skill, the ability to return, that is where the magic lives. Because in relationships, we check out all the time. We leave the moment emotionally before we ever leave physically. We armor up. We dissociate. We rehearse our defense instead of listening. And most conflict isn't about what's actually being said. It's about not feeling seen. It's about the nervous system registering, I am not safe here. My needs are not being met. Maitri shows up, though, in the smallest, most unglamorous ways. It shows up when you put your phone down, even when the urge to scroll is strong. It shows up when you make eye contact, even when it feels vulnerable. It shows up when you listen without interrupting, not to agree, not to fix, not to correct, but to understand. It shows up when you pause before reacting, letting the first wave of defensiveness pass before you speak. These are not small acts. From an energetic perspective, presence is grounding. It anchors you in your body. It stabilizes your field, and it interrupts the fight, flight, freeze loop that so often hijacks communication. Oh yeah. Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Presence sends a very old, very primal message. I am here. I am not leaving this moment, and you are not alone in this space. That message alone can soften a hardened nervous system. In witchcraft, presence is what gives spell work its potency. A distracted witch scatters energy. A present witch concentrates it. The same is true in relationships. When you are fully present, your words carry weight, your silence carries intention, and your listening becomes an offering. But Maitri is not about forcing presence at all costs. Sometimes, presence looks like staying when every single part of you wants to run, staying in your body, staying with the breath, staying with the discomfort long enough to respond instead of react. Other times, presence looks like asking for a pause. Not storming out, not shutting down, but saying, I need a moment before I speak, because you respect the power of your words. And sometimes, and this one's important, Maitri looks like choosing silence because words would wound. Not silence as suppression, not silence as avoidance, but silence as discernment. Knowing the difference between this needs to be said and this needs to be said later, and this does not need to be said at all. That discernment is not passivity, that discernment is wisdom. Yoga trains this wisdom every time you choose not to push deeper just to prove you can. Every time you recognize that more effort is not the same as more integrity. Every time you listen to your breath instead of your ego. From a witch's perspective, wisdom is one of the oldest forms of magic. It's the ability to read the moment, feel the current, and sense when to act and when to wait. Maitri does not ask you to be endlessly available. It asks you to be attentive. Attentive to your body, the energy in the room, and to what is being asked and what is not. Presence does not mean tolerating harm. It does not mean staying in conversations that are unsafe or abusive. It means being so connected to yourself that you can feel when it's time to stay, pause, or time to leave without drama, without collapse, and definitely without self-betrayal. That level of presence is not accidental. It is practiced. Breath by breath, moment by moment, conversation by conversation. And when you bring that kind of presence into relationships, something alchemical happens. Defensiveness softens, misunderstandings slow down, and trust has space to grow. Not because everyone suddenly behaves perfectly, but because you are no longer abandoning yourself in the moment where it matters most. That is Maitri as spell work. Quiet, grounded, and powerful. And when practiced consistently, it transforms not just how you relate to others, but how safe it feels to be fully, unapologetically you. And now, let's bring the body back into the conversation, shall we? Because relationships don't only live in the mind, they live in the chest, the shoulders, throat, and your breath. They live in the places where we brace without realizing it, and in the places that ache when we've been holding too much for too long. In yoga, the heart center, Anahata Chakra, is where relationship lives in the energetic body. Anahata sits at the crossroads. It bridges survival and expression, instinct and intention, self and other. It's the meeting place between our animal need for safety and our human capacity for connection. When Anahata is balanced, we can give and receive love without losing ourselves. We can stay open without becoming porous, and we can feel deeply without drowning. But when Anahata is guarded, the body tells the story before the mind does. We see fur in my nose, I think. We see emotional withdrawal, the subtle pulling back, the crossing of arms, the shallow breath. We see fear of vulnerability, the hesitation to soften, the instinct to intellectualize instead of feel. We see difficulty trusting, not just others, but life itself. The chest tightens, the breath stays high, and the heart protects itself the only way it knows how. On the other side of the spectrum, though, when Anahata is overextended, a different pattern emerges. Overgiving, poor boundaries, self-sacrifice dressed up as love. The chest collapses forward, the shoulders round inward. The heart reaches and reaches, hoping that giving more will finally create safety. Neither extreme is harmony. Both are signs that the heart is trying to survive rather than relate. This is why heart-opening asana matters, and also why it must be approached with care. Heart opening is not about cracking yourself open. It's not about forcing vulnerability, and it's not about pushing through discomfort to prove how open-hearted you are. Now, heart opening is about creating space safely. Gentle practices like supported Uttanasana allow the front body to open while the back feels held. Soft Bhujangasana invites extension without collapse or strain. Anjali Mudra at the heart creates conscious connection without exposure. These practices don't demand openness, they invite it. They invite breath into the chest. They invite awareness into emotional holding patterns. They invite sensation without overwhelm. And this is where our witchy truth comes in here. When the body feels safe enough to open, the heart often follows. You cannot think your way into trust. I want to say that again because I want that one to really sink. You cannot think your way into trust. You cannot lecture yourself into vulnerability. But you can create the conditions where openness becomes possible. In witchcraft, we understand that the body is a vessel for magic. If the vessel is tense, braced, or armored, energy ain't gonna flow. Energy cannot flow cleanly. Yoga becomes a way of gently unarming the body, not to make it defenseless, but to make it responsive. As you practice heart-centered asana, notice where you brace. Do your shoulders creep up towards your ears? Does your jaw clench? Does your breath stop when sensation increases? Notice where you hold, not with judgment, with curiosity. What is this part of me protecting? What has it learned to expect? What would help it feel safer right now? Instead of forcing release, invite inquiry. Instead of pushing deeper, soften around the edges. That shift from forcing to listening is Maitri embodied, and it matters deeply in relationships. Because how you open your chest on the mat often mirrors how you open or don't in conversation. If you habitually overextend in heart-opening poses, you may notice a pattern of overgiving in relationships. If you resist any chest expansion, you may notice fear around vulnerability or being seen. Neither pattern is wrong. Both are information. Yoga gives us a somatic language for understanding how we love, how we protect ourselves, and where we need more support. Heart-centered asana doesn't make you more loving by default. Not any more than rose quartz does. It makes you more aware. Aware of where you close, where you give too much, and where kindness needs boundaries to stay healthy. That awareness is the beginning of harmony. Because Maitri is not about keeping the heart permanently open. It's about knowing when to open, how to open, and when to rest. It's about allowing the heart to be responsive rather than reactive. Strong enough to stay present, wise enough to protect itself, but soft enough to connect. When practiced this way, heart-opening asana becomes more than a physical practice. It becomes a ritual of listening, a spell of attunement, and a quiet act of self-trust. And over time, that trust ripples outward into how you show up in relationships, how you hold space for others, and how safe it feels to be fully, authentically you. That is Anahata in balance. That is Maitri in the body. And that is where harmony begins, not as an idea, but as a lived, breathing experience. Now, are you ready to ground all of this into something a little bit more tangible? Because we can talk as much as we want about philosophy, nervous systems, and energetic awareness, while sometimes the body and the spirit need something physical, something we can see, touch, and return to. If you work with candles, and I know a lot of us do, this is a simple Maitri spell that you can practice this week. Absolutely no elaborate setup, no rare ingredients, and no moon phase math required. That's the word I'm looking for. Wow. No moon phase math required. Just intention, presence, and honesty. So you're going to need one candle, pink if you want to emphasize compassion and tenderness, green if you want to emphasize harmony and balance, or white if that's what you have, because intention matters far more than color. Now you need a quiet moment, even just 5 minutes counts. And you're gonna, like we did here, before you light your candle, take a moment to arrive. One hand on your heart, one on your belly. This anchors you in both Anahata and the gut, the places where we feel relationships most clearly. Take 3 slow breaths, not forced, not dramatic, just real. On the first breath, notice where your body is tense. On the second, allow the exhale to soften that tension, even slightly. On the third, let yourself arrive fully in the moment. Then, speak these words out loud if you can, whispered if you must. May my heart remain open without self-betrayal. May my kindness be rooted in truth. May harmony find me where effort once lived. Notice what they don't say. They don't ask for someone else to change. They don't demand reconciliation. They don't override boundaries. This is not a spell of control. It's a spell of alignment. Now, light your candle. Fine. Light your candle. And as the flame steadies, imagine it representing your energetic presence in your relationships. It's not flaring, not flaring, not shrinking, just steady. And let the candle burn while you journal, meditate, do some asana, or simply just sit and breathe. If your mind wanders to specific people or situations, don't force it away. Just notice what arises. Are you feeling tightness, relief, grief, maybe clarity? All of that information is part of the magic. From a witch's perspective, this spell does something subtle but powerful. It resets the tone that you bring into relationship. Instead of leading with effort, it invites ease. Instead of leading with defense, it invites discernment. Instead of leading with self-sacrifice, it invites self-respect. This is important, so let me say it quite plainly. You do not create harmony by trying harder. You create harmony by becoming clearer. Clearer about what you can give, what you cannot carry, about where kindness ends and self-erasure begins. That clarity changes how people meet you, whether or not they ever know you lit a candle. Energetically, it's the difference between broadcasting tension and broadcasting steadiness. And steadiness is magnetic. If you want to deepen this spell, you can return to it over several days. Light the same candle at the same time each evening and repeat the words. Notice what shifts, not just in others, but in you. Do conversations feel different? Do you pause more easily before reacting? Do you notice your body signaling a boundary just a little bit sooner? That's the spell working. Because Maitri magic isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand results. It changes the way you inhabit yourself in relationships. And that matters more than you think. It matters because every interaction you have carries energy. Every conversation is an exchange. Every silence communicates something. When your energetic tone shifts from effort to presence, from collapse to clarity, relationships reorganize around that truth. Some soften, some strengthen, some fall away. All of that is part of harmony. This candle spell is not about fixing anything. It doesn't fix shit. It's about coming home to yourself before you step back into connection. And from this witch's perspective, that is some of the most ethical, powerful magic you can practice. Quiet, grounded, rooted in truth. That is Maitri at work. Not as performance, but as a living, breathing practice you carry with you long after the flame goes out. Take a sip real quick. Meditation. This is some powerful spell work here. Oh, metta meditation. This is often taught like a sweet, gentle practice. Soft phrases, warm feelings, a sense of universal goodwill that sounds lovely and harmless. And while metta can feel tender, make no mistake, this is serious magic. It's not passive. It is not fluffy bunny. It is not about pretending everything is fine. Metta is intentional spell work for the mind, nervous system, and the energetic body. When you practice metta, you are deliberately redirecting thought forms. You are interrupting mental grooves that have been carved by years, sometimes generations, of resentment, bitterness, self-attack, and unprocessed grief. You are breaking habitual curses. Because yes, from witchy perspective, some thought patterns function exactly like curses. They loop, they drain, they distort perception. They keep you energetically entangled with people and situations long after the moment has passed. Metta meditation works at the level where those loops live. One moment. Ladies and germs, I have got to go. One of my kids was just in a car accident and desperately needs mom. I will keep this live for a few minutes, but family first. Camera. Thank you. Okay, baby, I'm here.
We will be updating you momentarily whether this stream is ending. Please stand by. Thank you so much to those who have stuck around. She will be coming back probably about 1 minute.
Thank you so very much for your patience, everybody. My kiddo is okay. Their car is kind of ouched, but should be okay. No injuries, just the joys of driving in the Pacific Northwest in the rain after dark. Go figure. All right. That's okay. I am going to start this particular section back over and we'll go from there. Okay, we are talking meditation as spell work. We are now talking meditation as spell work. All right. Meditation is typically taught like a sweet, gentle practice. Some soft phrases, warm, fuzzy feelings, a sense of universal goodwill that sounds lovely and harmless. And while metta can feel tender, make absolutely no mistake, this is some serious magic. This is not passive. This is not fluffy bunny. This is not about pretending everything is fine. Metta is intentional spell work for the mind, the nervous system, and the energetic body. When you practice metta, you are deliberately redirecting thought forms. You are interrupting mental grooves that have been carved by years and sometimes generations of resentment, bitterness, self-attack, and unprocessed grief. You are breaking habitual curses. Because yes, from a witch's perspective, some thought patterns function exactly like curses. They loop, they drain, they distort perception, and they keep you energetically entangled with people and situations long after their time has passed. Metta meditation works at the level where these loops live. Each phrase, may I be safe, may I be at peace, may I be free from suffering. It is not just a wish. It's a reprogramming directive. It teaches the nervous system what safety really feels like. It teaches the mind a new default response. It teaches your energetic body that it no longer needs to stay braced for impact. When you send loving kindness to yourself, you begin reclaiming internal territory that has been colonized by self-criticism and shame. When you send metta to people you love, you strengthen bonds without clinging. And when you send metta to someone difficult, this is where the real magic happens. Because let's be very, very clear about what this is not. Sending loving kindness to someone who has hurt you does not excuse harm. It does not absolve accountability. It does not mean reconciliation. And it sure as the hell does not require continued access to you. Metta is not about them. It is about you choosing sovereignty. When you practice metta towards a difficult person, you are saying, I refuse to let my energy remain trapped in this conflict. I refuse to rehearse this pain forever, and I refuse, absolutely refuse, to let bitterness live rent-free in my body. That is not forgiveness as a demand. That is freedom as a choice. From an energetic perspective, resentment creates cords. Anger keeps attention tethered. Unspoken rage binds you to the very thing you want to escape. Metta cuts those cords gently but effectively. It dissolves the psychic tug-of-war, not by overpowering it, but by stepping out of it. This is why metta is such powerful spell work for relationships. It changes the field you're operating in. You stop broadcasting reactivity. You stop feeding old emotional contracts. You stop offering your nervous system as a battleground. And something subtle but very, very profound shifts. The situation may not change immediately. The other person may not change at all. But you do. Your breath, softens faster. Your body recovers more quickly after emotional activation. Your mind stops circling the same story. Sometimes, after consistent metta practice, you realize something surprising. You don't actually need resolution. You need release. Metta gives you permission to put the burden down. And here's another witchy truth that matters, my lovely witchlings. You do not owe everyone access to your heart in order to wish them well. You do not owe anyone access to your heart in order to wish them well. You can send metta from a distance. You can wish peace without reopening doors. You can offer loving kindness without offering proximity. That discernment is part of the spell. If you work with metta regularly, you may notice resistance arise, especially when you get to the difficult person stage. That resistance is information, and it tells you where the wound still lives. It tells you where protection is still active. It tells you where the nervous system doesn't yet trust safety. Do not force your way through that. Maitri does not demand compliance. Now, if the traditional phrases feel too much, adjust them. Instead of, may you be happy, try, may you find peace that does not require my suffering. Instead of, may you be free from suffering, try, may I be free from carrying this. Metta is adaptable. It meets you where you are. And over time, something remarkable happens. You begin to choose peace where chaos once fed. You choose softness where sharpness once lived. You choose clarity over entanglement. That is not weakness. That is mastery. Sometimes the most potent magic is not dramatic or loud. Sometimes the most potent magic is the quiet decision to stop bleeding energy into an old wound, to stop replaying the same story, and to stop defining yourself by who and what hurt you. Metta meditation teaches you how to do that. One breath, one phrase, one moment of willingness at a time. It is spell work that leaves no scorch marks, no backlash, no karmic mess. Just a gradual return of your energy to yourself. And when that happens, relationships, whether they remain, transform, or fall away, no longer hold power over your peace. That is Maitri as magic. Subtle, ethical, liberating. And when practiced consistently, it becomes one of the most powerful tools you have for creating harmony, both within and beyond yourself. So, here's something witches understand deeply, my friends, even when we don't always have the language for it at first. We don't enter relationships alone. We bring our ancestors with us, not just in memory or story, but in the nervous system, in the body, in the reflexes we didn't consciously choose. We inherit patterns of silence where emotions were swallowed to keep the peace, patterns of conflict where love was loud, volatile, and unpredictable, patterns of endurance where staying mattered more than safety, patterns of loyalty where leaving felt like betrayal even when staying caused harm, patterns of emotional distance where connection existed but intimacy was dangerous. And these patterns don't make us broken. They make us human. They are adaptations, strategies that once kept someone alive, protected, fed, and or accepted. But what kept an ancestor safe in one era may suffocate us in another. And this is where Maitri moves beyond personal growth and into lineage work. Practicing Maitri isn't just about becoming a kinder individual. It's about interrupting cycles that have been repeating for generations. Cycles that sound like, we just don't talk about that. You just endure. Family comes first, no matter what. Love means sacrifice. Don't make waves. Don't rock the boat. Why have I got a freaking hair in my eye? Don't rock the boat, right? Yoga gives us the capacity to notice when these patterns activate, not as stories in the mind, but as sensations in the body. The tight chest when conflict arises, the freeze response when it's time to speak, the impulse to overfunction and smooth things over, or my favorite, take responsibility for everyone's feelings. Sorry. Now I'm going to find where it is. There it is. Witchcraft gives us the language to name what's happening. This isn't just me. This is ancestral. And that naming matters. Because when something is unnamed, it feels inevitable. When it's named, it becomes workable. Maitri becomes the tool that allows us to work with these patterns without turning against ourselves or our lineage. This is important. This is important. Ancestral repair is not about blaming those who came before us. Ancestral repair is not about blaming those who came before us. It's about understanding context. Our ancestors lived through wars, displacement, oppression, poverty, loss, and systemic harm. They did the best they could with what they had. And still, some of the survival strategies they passed down are no longer serving us. Maitri allows us to hold both truths at once. Respect for where we came from, commitment to doing better with what we now know. When we know better, we do better. Right, good. Every time you choose non-harm instead of reenactment, you are doing lineage work. When your body wants to lash out because that's what it learned and you pause instead, that's ancestral repair. Every time you tell the truth without cruelty, when silence or explosive honesty were the only options modeled for you, that's ancestral repair. Every time you stop sacrificing yourself to keep the peace when self-erasure was once the price of belonging, that is ancestral repair. Let's be clear though, this work is not always comfortable. Sometimes healing ancestral patterns feels like grief. Grief for what you didn't receive, grief for the love that came with conditions, grief for the versions of connection that were never modeled for you. Maitri does not rush that grief. It doesn't demand forgiveness on a timeline, and it doesn't ask you to bypass anger or pain in the name of spiritual maturity. It asks you to meet what arises with kindness and clarity. Now, from this witch's perspective, this is some of the most powerful magic there is, because when you heal a pattern in yourself, you don't change just your own life. You change the energetic inheritance moving forward, whether or not you have children, whether or not your family ever understands your choices. The work still counts. Every relationship you engage in from a place of awareness becomes a living offering to your lineage. You are saying, this is where the cycle softens. This is where the harm stops. This is where love learns a new shape. Yoga supports this work by teaching you how to stay present with discomfort long enough for it to transform. Saying that again. Yoga supports this work by teaching you how to stay present with discomfort long enough for it to transform. Witchcraft supports it by honoring that transformation as sacred. Together, they remind you that you are not betraying your ancestors by choosing healthier patterns. You are honoring their survival by allowing yourself more than just survival. You are not rejecting your lineage when you choose boundaries, truth, or rest. You are completing something they didn't have the space or safety to complete themselves. That's some powerful magic. Quiet, slow magic, the kind that doesn't announce itself, but changes everything over time. And when you practice Maitri with this awareness toward yourself, toward others, toward the unseen threads that connect you backward and forward, you step into relationships not as a lone individual, but as a conscious link in a living chain. One who chooses kindness without collapse, truth without cruelty, harmony without self-erasure. That is lineage healing in motion. That is witchcraft rooted in love. And that, my friends, is how relationships become not just places of connection, but places of transformation. Baby boy. Sorry, y'all. Somebody's demanding attention. All right, now let's talk about the yamas and niyamas as relational spells. In yogic philosophy, the yamas and niyamas are often taught as ethical guidelines, lists to memorize, concepts to study, boxes to check on the way to being a good yogi. But witches recognize something immediately when we look at these teachings. These are not rules. They are spells for how energy moves between people. They are instructions for how to shape relationships without domination, collapse, or self-erasure. They are frameworks for harmony that do not rely on silence, endurance, or spiritual bypassing. What a concept. When practiced consciously, the yamas and niyamas don't make you compliant, they make you clear. Let's start with ahimsa, my favorite. Ahimsa is often translated as non-harming, but it's frequently misunderstood as never upset anyone. That is not ahimsa. That is avoidance. True ahimsa includes your words, your tone, and your silence. It asks, is what I'm about to say necessary? Is it truthful? Is it being delivered with care? But it also asks something just as important. What harm am I doing to myself by not saying this? Silence can be compassionate. Silence can also be violent to yourself. Ahimsa in relationships means refusing cruelty, yes, but it also means refusing self-abandonment. It does not mean weaponizing honesty. What the fluff am I saying? It means not weaponizing honesty. There, I spit it out. And not weaponizing politeness. It is the spell that says, I will not cause unnecessary harm inside or out. Gee, that sounds an awful lot like the Wiccan read, and ye harm none, do as ye will. Wow. Next comes satya, or truthfulness. Satya without compassion is brutality. Compassion without satya is dishonesty. In relationships, satya asks us to speak truth in service of clarity, not control. This is where Maitri becomes essential, because Truth delivered without kindness is often just a way to discharge emotion, and kindness without truth becomes manipulation or martyrdom. Satya is not about saying everything you think. It's about saying what is needed, when it is needed, in a way that can be received. So, from another perspective, Satya is a spell of alignment. It is a spell of alignment. When your inner reality and your outer expression match, your energy stabilizes. There's less leakage, resentment, and confusion. Relationships absolutely thrive on this kind of integrity. Not perfection, but coherence. Then we have Svadhyaya, self-study. This is where the mirror turns inward. Svadhyaya asks us to notice our patterns without shame, not to excuse them or justify them, but to observe them honestly. Now, in relationships, this might sound like, why does this particular situation activate me so strongly? Why do I always want to fix this person? Why does setting this boundary feel terrifying? Svadhyaya recognizes that not every reaction is about the present moment. Some reactions are echoes. Some are protective strategies we learned long ago. And even more are ancestral nervous system level habits. When practiced with Maitri, Svadhyaya becomes a spell of liberation. Instead of saying, I'm broken, you say, I'm patterned. And patterns can be changed. Yoga trains this awareness somatically. Witchcraft honors it ritually. Together, they allow you to take responsibility without self-attack. And then there is santosha, contentment. This one is often misunderstood as complacency. It is not. Santosha is not, I guess this is fine. It is not settling. It is not staying where you are harmed. Santosha is the release of the need to control others in order to feel okay. In relationships, Santosha says, I do not need to manage your emotions to regulate my own. I do not need you to change in order to choose peace. I can accept what is while still choosing what's next. From a magical perspective, hey, Santosha cuts cords of control. Nice, right? It dissolves the spell that says, if I just say the right thing, do enough, or explain better, this will finally feel safe. And Santosha allows you to stop pouring energy into impossible bargains, because sometimes it won't. It doesn't matter what you say or do or explain, you're just never going to feel safe. At least in some situations. And now here's the important part. None of these are rules. Rules are all external. Spells are participatory. Rules punish failure. Spells respond to intention and repetition. The yamas and niyamas don't demand perfection. They ask for practice. They ask you to notice, adjust, and try again. When lived, not just studied, these teachings create harmony that does not require you to disappear. They create relationships where truth can exist without cruelty. Kindness can exist without collapse. Boundaries can exist without guilt. Presence can exist without control. That is rare, and it is so powerful. Through the witch's lens, living the yamas and niyamas is a form of ongoing spell work. Every conversation becomes an opportunity to choose non-harm overreaction. Every boundary becomes an act of truth spoken with care, and every moment of self-awareness becomes a chance to break a pattern instead of reenacting it. Every release of control becomes a reclaiming of energy. This is not passive spirituality. This is relational alchemy. And it matters because relationships are one of the primary ways energy moves through our lives. They can be places of nourishment or places of depletion. The yamas and niyamas help you tend those energetic exchanges consciously. Not by making you smaller, not by making you silent, but by helping you stay whole. When you practice ahimsa, satya, svadhyaya, and santosha all together through the lens of Maitri, you are not trying to be good. You are trying to be true. True to your body, your nervous system, capacity, and values. And that truth becomes the foundation for harmony that lasts. Not harmony built on fear, endurance, but harmony built on presence, clarity, and respect. That is yoga beyond the mat, and that is witchcraft beyond ritual. And that, my loves, is how relationships become not just survivable, but sacred. And now we have a really important conversation. Maitri, boundaries, and chosen distance. There is a conversation that almost always makes people uncomfortable in spiritual spaces. And that, my witchlings, is the conversation about distance. Specifically, the reality that sometimes the most loving, compassionate, and self-honoring thing you can do in a relationship is to step back or step away entirely, especially when that relationship is with family. Many, many, many of us were taught directly or indirectly that family is exempt from boundaries, that blood overrides behavior, that love means enduring harm quietly and calling it virtue. And this is where Maitri is often misunderstood, because Maitri does not mean unlimited access. It does not mean endless forgiveness without accountability, and it does not mean sacrificing your nervous system on the altar of keeping the peace. Maitri is loving kindness, and loving kindness includes yourself. In fact, if Maitri does not include yourself, it ceases to be kindness at all. Let me put this plainly. Choosing low contact or no contact with a toxic family member can be an act of profound Maitri. It can be self-compassion in the most embodied form. Yoga teaches us to recognize when something is causing harm. If a pose creates a sharp pain, we don't push through it in the name of discipline. We modify, we back off, we rest, right? We don't call that failure. We call it wisdom. Relationships are no different. If repeated interactions consistently lead to dysregulation, anxiety, self-doubt, or emotional harm, your body is giving you information, and Maitri asks you to listen. From my perspective, relationships are energetic ecosystems. Some are nourishing, some are neutral, some are actively toxic AF. Remaining in an environment that repeatedly destabilizes you is not compassion. That is self-neglect. And here is where many people struggle. They confuse kindness with availability, but they are not the same. You can wish someone well and still limit or remove their access to you. You can hold compassion for someone's wounds without offering yourself as the place they bleed. You can honor your lineage without allowing it to harm you. Maitri does not ask you to keep your heart open to harm. It asks you to keep your heart intact. Low contact and no contact are not punishments. I'm going to say that one at least one more time. Low contact and no contact are not punishments. They are boundaries shaped by reality. Low contact might look like limiting conversations to neutral topics, gray rocking, reducing the frequency of your interactions, choosing written communication over verbal, harder to gaslight that way, ending conversations when disrespect appears. That's a good boundary. No contact might look like ending communication entirely, blocking access, grieving privately what cannot be repaired. Neither choice is easy. Both require discernment, courage, and grief. And yes, grief is often part of Maitri when it comes to family. Grief for the relationship you wanted, for the safety you deserved, for the version of family that never existed. Maitri does not rush that grief. It does not shame it. It does not demand forgiveness on a timeline. It allows you to feel what is real without turning that pain inward. From a yogic perspective, this is nervous system level care. When you remove yourself from chronically harmful dynamics, your body begins to recalibrate. Your breath deepens, your muscles soften, hypervigilance decreases. This is not being dramatic. This is biology responding to safety. Self-compassion means recognizing that healing cannot happen in the same environment where harm is ongoing. You cannot heal a wound that the scab keeps being peeled from. And here is something important that often gets lost. Choosing distance does not mean you lack love. It means you are no longer willing to confuse love with endurance. Maitri teaches us to release the belief that suffering is proof of devotion. That belief did not originate in wisdom. It originated in survival. For many, many families, silence kept people safe, compliance avoided conflict, endurance ensured belonging. But what once protected the system may now be harming the individual. Choosing Maitri means choosing to interrupt that pattern. That interruption is not betrayal. It is differentiation. And differentiation is necessary for healthy relationships, whether closeness ever resumes or not. From a witch's lens, choosing no contact can also very much be a form of energetic warding. You are saying, this energy no longer has access to my field. This pattern ends with me. This harm does not get passed forward. That is powerful magic. Quiet, unseen, and often misunderstood, but powerful nonetheless. Now let's name the guilt, because it shows up for almost everyone. All right, let's see if I can say these without sounding horrible. Guilt often says, but they're family. They did their best. What if I'm the problem? What if I regret this later? Maitri does not silence these questions, but it does help you look at, it does help you understand. Maitri does not silence these questions, but it helps you answer them honestly. You can acknowledge someone's limitations without offering them continued access. You can understand someone's trauma without accepting mistreatment. You can hold compassion without sacrificing your peace. Self-compassion means believing your lived experience. It means trusting your body's signals, and it means honoring the wisdom that says enough. And if someday circumstances change, if accountability appears, if behavior shifts, if safety becomes possible, Maitri allows for reassessment. Distance does not have to be permanent to be valid, but it does have to be respected. Here's the deepest truth of this section, y'all. Maitri does not ask you to stay connected to people who require you to abandon yourself. It asks you to treat yourself with the same kindness you would offer someone you love deeply. Would you tell someone you care about to keep returning to harm because that's just how family is? Would you tell them that their nervous system doesn't matter? Of course not. So, you are not asking for too much. You are asking for safety, dignity, and a life that doesn't require constant self-defense. That is not selfish. That is not selfish. That is sacred. And sometimes the most compassionate relationship choice you can make is not about staying. It is about stepping back, tending to your own healing, and choosing peace over proximity. That, my darling dear witchlings, is Maitri in its most courageous form. Not loud, not dramatic, but deeply, unwaveringly kind to yourself. And that is where all real harmony begins. I have to tell you that when I finally had the courage to step back and go very low contact with my family of origin, my chronic pain got far better. My mental health got far better. And I just am doing better. It was the best thing I've ever done for myself. So this week, witchlings, I invite you to practice Maitri intentionally. Pause before responding. Soften your body in conversation. Offer yourself kindness after difficult moments. Notice where harmony asks for boundaries, not silence. And before we part ways tonight, I invite you to join me for our Friday night guided meditation and yoga nidra, where we're going even deeper into compassion, connection, and nervous system level peace. Details are on the website, as always, and in the description box. Thank you, my witchlings, for being here. You are loved, wanted, and needed, and your presence matters so much more than you know. And I want to leave you with this. May your heart remain soft and discerning. May your boundaries be clear and kind. May your relationships reflect the respect you cultivate within. May Maitri move through you like a quiet spell, softening what can soften, strengthening what must remain firm, and clearing what no longer belongs in your field. May you walk in harmony without shrinking, love without losing yourself, and remember, peace is not passive, it is practiced. Namaste, my witchlings. Blessed be. Now let's go out and spread love, spread joy, and spread kindness. There's already enough darkness and hate. Please, let's try to be beacons of hope and light for those lost in the dark. Tell your loved ones, whether they walk on two legs, fly with wings, curl up with fur, glide with scales, or tiptoe on those tiny paws and claws, that they are absolutely precious to you. Moments slip away faster than we expect, and those last goodbyes often come way too soon. And if you take only one thing away from this, please let it be that you remember you are loved, you are wanted, you are needed, and your purpose here is real and genuine, even if you haven't discovered it yet. I was 45 before I did. I love you guys to bits. Namaste, my witchlings.